Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsey. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up or commenting below. If you want to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to make this card, you can visit my online store and the link is in the description box below. Today I'd like to share with you another alternative project using the 2020 September paper pumpkin kit called Hello Pumpkin. So this kit comes with everything you need to create 20 treat boxes. If you would like to watch me unbox this kit, you can click on the link in the top right corner, and that will take you to my playlist where you can also find my other alternative videos. So our card today uses the stamp set to create our main image. So I'm just going to show that to you really quick. It includes some really fun greetings as well as some images, a witch's hat, a large pumpkin, some faces to turn that pumpkin into a jack-o'-lantern, and then these small images of leaves and then a flower. This small pumpkin here comes from the small pumpkin on the witch's hat. And today I'm going to show you how you can remove a smaller image from a large image so that you can use it individually on a card. We're also going to be talking about Stampin' Write markers and how to use them to get different colors when you stamp for your images. And then we're going to be blending that color out using a blender pen today. So those are some of the fun techniques we'll talk about today while we make this card. So let's go ahead and get started. Don't miss out on the fun. Make sure to subscribe by October 10th to receive next month's kit. It will make 8 beautiful holiday cards. Subscribe by clicking on the link below in the description box. So we're going to begin with the stamping. And the first thing I want to do is stamp our pumpkins. So what I have, I've got my big or my large pumpkin here on a clear block, and I'm going to use the Cajun Craze ink spot from the kit. I also have 2 different colors of green in a Stampin' Write marker. And I've got Mossy Meadow and Old Olive. And so how I'm going to begin this is I'm going to take the Cajun Craze and I'm going to cover the pumpkin. Now if I get a little bit on my stem and leaves, that's okay. So just go ahead and ink up that whole pumpkin. You can see that I do have a little bit of color coming into the stem and on the leaves. And so I'm not worried about that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the darker of the green and I'm going to just color right over that Cajun Craze. And this is going to kind of turn it a little bit more brown, which is not a problem for me. But I'm removing that color with another color. Now you would only want to do this if your color is darker than the original color. You don't want to do that if your marker color is lighter, or you might start to change the tip of your marker here to a different color. So what I've done is I've taken that dark Mossy Meadow color and I have colored the stem all in the dark color, and I've covered up the red from the Cajun Craze anywhere that it's touched the other images. And now I'm going to take the Old Olive and I'm going to finish filling in those images, the leaf and the little curly Q with that Old Olive. And I can go ahead and blend that green together. Those colors aren't going to ruin each other in the marker. So there we go. So now I've got my pumpkin in that Cajun Craze and I have green for my leaves and stem. I'm going to add a little bit of a warm breath on here. So you just kind of make a sound and it will add moisture back into this inked image, and then I'll be able to stamp it and get a good image from this using my markers instead of an ink pad. So you can see how it kind of gets a little bit steamy on there, puts that moisture back into the color, and then good pressure. And then when I remove it, I have a fun multicolored stamped image. So now, before everything dries, we're going to use a blender pen. So your blender pen comes with 2 sides, And I should have mentioned that so do your Stampin' Write markers. And you'll notice there's a thick line here and a thin line, and that tells you if you have a thick brush is on the thick line side, or if you have a writing side. So this is a thin brush for like writing notes in your cards or other things. Okay, so that's the different sizes, and there's even an image here to help you as well. So for this one, they're both brushes, so it doesn't really matter which side you use. I've used, one side has my Cajun Craze and the other side is more green. So that's how I'm going to use this. So I'm going to start with the Cajun Craze, and I'm just going to add a little bit to my stamped images. And this is just going to start blending that color into my pumpkin. You want to kind of remember that you want to keep some areas that are highlights, so don't fill up everything with the same shade of that Cajun Craze. So keep some highlighted areas to give your image a more three-dimensional look. So something like that. If you do want a little darker, maybe at the bottom, you can just pick up a little bit of color from your stamped or your ink pad, and then you can add just a little bit darker color down at the bottom to give a little bit of shadow down there. Okay. So there's the Cajun Craze. And now we can move to the green side. And so we're just going to do the exact same thing here. Going to add a little bit of color and just blend that all together. And then here for the curly Q, I did go over that just to kind of give it that same look as the other parts. So you can see how it has a little more blended look. And if I want to add a little darker color, I can do the same thing with my marker. I can just pick up a little color off my marker tip and just add a little darker color down at the base of that stem to give just a little more shadow. Okay, then make sure you just recap these. We're going to be using these again, so I'm not going to clean them right now, but I will show you how to clean those after we stamp the small pumpkin. So I'm just going to repeat this one more time so that we can get 2 large pumpkins for our card. So you begin again by inking it up with the Cajun Craze. Just make sure your whole pumpkin is covered. Start with your dark color of green, and you can go ahead and remove the Cajun Craze that's on your stem and leaves with that dark green color. And then use your old olive to create a lighter green where you would like it. Then add a little moisture and stamp again. And then use your blender pen. I'm going to start with that Cajun Craze, and there should be a little more ink that I can pull this time since I didn't spend a lot of time showing you the image. And just kind of remember to have highlights and shadows. The shadows should kind of be between those little grooves in the pumpkin, and then the highlights can kind of be on that top and middle area. And then if you want more color, you can add more color to the bottom, and then do the same thing with your blender pen for the leaves and the stem. Now if you work your blender pen too much, it will start to kind of bleed out and you're going to lose some definition. And you might see a little bit of that happening here at this top pumpkin where I added the extra color and shadow. So just kind of keep that in mind. You don't want to overwork your blender pen. Okay, so now moving on to our witch's hat. I'm not sure if you can see that image well, but there's the witch's hat here and there's a little pumpkin in the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to ink up just like before the pumpkin. Now if we're going to fussy cut this pumpkin out, so we're not worried about those other images being stamped as well. So we're going to just ink that up and then do the exact same thing for the stem and any Cajun Craze that got on the leaves. And go ahead and use your old olive and get some leaves. And that cute little curly Q. There's one over here too. Okay. And then add a little moisture. And then stamp that. So there you go. You can kind of see how that turned out. And then grab your blender pen and fill in that pumpkin with a little color. And make sure you do the stem and leaves as well. Super cute. Okay, so now that we are done with our blender pen, you want to grab a piece of scrap paper and you're just going to wipe it on that scrap paper until it runs clear. And the tip will be stained, but as long as it's not transferring color, you'll be fine. And do the same for the other side until it runs clear. And you can rotate it so that you can get everything that is on that tip. All right, so next we're going to take a good pair of paper snips and we're going to fussy cut these pumpkins out. I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to do the small one, and then I'll do these two larger ones off camera. So this pumpkin does have some things that are over it. We've got a solid flower here as well as a solid flower there. And so when you are cutting this, you are going to need to cut really close to the edge of that pumpkin so that you don't get a lot of those extra images. However, when you're near that flower, you're just going to keep the shape of the pumpkin. Don't fussy cut the flower out of the shape, because honestly, you're not going to see it, that little bit of flower in that pumpkin once it's on your card. It's kind of going to disappear and just become part of the pumpkin, kind of like a little shadow area. You could even put a little rhinestone over it if it bothers you that much. But if you removed it from the pumpkin, then your pumpkin's going to look unfinished. And so sometimes when you're fussy cutting and removing a small image like this from a larger image, you kind of just have to go with what you're given, and you don't want to create, what am I trying to say? So you don't want to remove parts, even if they're being covered up, because then the image won't look good when it's by itself. And so the same goes for here. There's a little bit of a flower that kind of comes into the pumpkin, but if I can keep the shape of the pumpkin, then you really don't even notice it once it's been fussy cut out. So you can see that here. So you can barely see those little dark spots now. But when it was part of the flower, it felt very obvious and kind of in your face. But now that we've removed it and we've kept the shape of the pumpkin, we barely even notice them. So when you fussy cut around these curly cues, you were not going to be able to get it's not going to be a very tight cut. So just keep that in mind, that you are kind of bubble cutting around the curly cues, and then do a tight cut around those leaves so that it kind of mimics that of the pumpkin. So now I'm just going to kind of do a quick speed cut of the larger pumpkins, and I can do a little looser cut here. I don't need to go right up to the edge on these pumpkins unless I want to. And I'll just speed this up. Okay, so my pumpkins are all cut out, and now the next stamping we're going to do is for our greeting, and we're going to just stamp that on one of the labels that came in the kit. So I have those here. I'm just going to go ahead and remove one. And then I'm just using the Give Thanks. I think it goes really well with the colors and the pumpkins. You could use any greeting that came with the kit in the stamp set with the kit, or even one that you have on hand. So go ahead and make your cards usable for you. So something that you're going to use. And so now that our stamping is all done, we can go ahead and talk about the other parts of our card. You are going to need one of the cracker box cutouts. And we're going to be using this middle strip here. So you're going to need to get your paper trimmer. Okay, so I have my paper trimmer here. And I do have some cards that I've made that have used this cute scallop. I have an alternative project I'm going to show tomorrow on my channel that's going to use this fun diamond repetition look for the card. And so I want to keep these intact. So what I'm going to do is there is a score line right here, and I'm going to line that up outside my cut line at the 1/4 inch. So my score line is here. This is my 1/4 inch marker here, and I'm lining that up. And so then I'm cutting with a 1/4 inch border on this side, if that makes sense. So you can see that I've got that 1 inch here. You can see it right there on that straight edge. And so that kind of keeps those pieces together. And so I can use them for some of my other alternative cards. And then we can do the same thing here. So again, here's that score line. Here's a 1/4 inch measurement. Line that up and then just trim. And that's going to give me a piece that's about 2 inches. And you can use either pattern. So for this card, I've used the pumpkin pie striped pattern. But for the one I'm doing today, I want to try and see how the Cajun Craze side works with this design. So another element you're going to need is a piece of bumblebee cardstock, and this is cut to 3.5 inches by 4 3/4 inches. And I'm going to run this through an embossing folder, and I've got the Pine Wood Planks 3D folder. I'm just going to go ahead and place that in the middle, and that's just going to give us a really fun wood grain texture for the background of this card. And I think that just really helps kind of tie in all that fun fall feeling. If you by chance don't have this embossing folder and want to use a different one, or just want to have a solid piece here with no embossing, that would be fine as well. So I'm going to run this through my cut and emboss machine, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have done that, and both sides are really great. So the side I've used here is the indented side. So it kind of, the paper has been pushed in, but the other side that is raised, you could use as well. So that is up to your own personal preference. Okay, so let's just double check that we have all our pieces. So we have our bumblebee. We do need a piece of Cajun Craze or another coordinating color. You could use Old Olive or Mossy Meadow if you wanted as well. And this is cut to 2.5 inches by 3 inches. And we're going to put our stamped images on that. That's going to be our background here. So let's go ahead and start putting our card together. I've got a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock, and it's cut to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4 1/4. And I'm just going to fold along that score line and then use a bone folder to make a nice crease. I'm going to add my embossed paper with a little liquid glue. And I always use liquid glue when I'm using embossing or when I've embossed a cardstock. It just kind of gives a little more stickiness, and it kind of gets in those cracks and just adheres really nicely. So this just goes right in the center of our card. You can just eyeball it. Once it's down, take that bone folder, open your card, and just rub that glue so it smooths it out, and you don't get any bumps and it doesn't warp your card. Next, I'm going to add our pattern paper. Again, I'm going to use this Cajun Craze side, and I will add that with some liquid glue as well. And another tip about liquid glue is don't use a lot. So this is it's a very thin line that covers the length of that paper, but it's not heavy. So I'm not getting a lot of moisture from that glue to warp my card. You want to put maybe about 1/4 of an inch or so on the left side so that you can see a little bit of that bumblebee poking out. And then it does come a little bit longer than that bumblebee on the top and bottom. So you can see that it will come down a little farther, and then smooth that out. Next, we're going to take the Cajun Craze cardstock and we're going to cut a little flag here. Now, if you don't want to, if you want to keep this a rectangle shape, you can do that. What I'm doing is I'm going to measure here. So I've got a grid, I've got a ruler at the top and bottom, and it's 2.5 inches. So I'm going to find the midpoint. So 2 inches would be at 1 inch, and then 1/2 inch would give me 1/4 inch. So it should be at 1 1/4. And I'm just going to make a little cut here. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to make just a little bit taller cut. So maybe about 1/4 of an inch or so up to about there. So I've cut about 1/4 of an inch in the middle. And then I go from each corner to the top of that cut line. And that's going to give me a nice even fishtail banner, but it's really shallow. We don't want it to be really deep or it's going to get into our stamped images. So you can see that that's about 1/4 of an inch deep. So let's add our stamped images here. I'm going to use the white side of a Cajun Craze doily. That's a die cut from the kit. I kind of wanted a little more white on this card. You could, again, use that bumblebee, just like this one, to kind of pull in that color if you'd like. To add this to my card, again, I'm using a little liquid glue, and I'm just going to find some areas that are a little bit wider, and I'm just going to put a dab, a smallest amount of glue here. If you want, you could use the glue dots that came in the kit. That would also be a good choice for this. And then just place this at the top. And if that glue comes out a little bit, you can get a paper towel and just kind of dab off some of that glue. Just make sure to get a new piece of paper towel when you move it around so you're not adding glue to the top and making everything sticky. Okay, so something like that. We'll add our give thanks in just a minute, and that's going to kind of pop up. And you can see that when you have one of the colors, it kind of will stand out. But because we're using white, we want that dimensional there to kind of help pop it out against that white. So let's go ahead and add our pumpkins next. I love liquid glue when I add elements like this, because I have the option to kind of move things around a little bit. I'm going to put this one here, and it kind of comes right in the middle on the left side. And then this one I'm putting down here. And the reason for that is because this got a little blurry with my blender pen, so I'm going to kind of hide it a little bit. If you want it to kind of come off the edge, you can do that as well. And then we're going to take our small one, and we're going to use some of the dimensionals that came in the kit, and we're going to add it in front of one of the pumpkins on the right, like this. I'm going to put that on a little more straight. So we've got a little pumpkin on there now, and he's popped up with a dimensional. And then I'm going to take some of those die cuts from the kit. So I've got a yellow curly Q here to pull in some of that yellow from the card. And then I have a couple different leaves colors. And so I was just going to kind of play with it to see what color I thought looked best. So I'm going to add some adhesive just here at the bottom. That should hold everything together pretty well. And I'm sticking that on the right side of that small little pumpkin. And again, if you need to grab a paper towel to kind of pick up any extra glue that comes out, that works as well. Okay, so there's the curly Q. I kind of brought it out a little bit so that you can see it against that Cajun Craze. And then just kind of pick a leaf to kind of tuck in here too. I think I'm going to go with that green one. That's kind of a fun one. I think this brown one would work as well. I wonder if this one would just be too similar of color. It kind of pops out nicely, but it's a lot of that same Cajun Craze. So I'm going to kind of pick one of these other ones here. So I'm going to do this green one. And again, you could use glue dots here or a little bit of glue. And just kind of pick it up and slide it underneath that little tiny pumpkin. Just to kind of help add some more interest and help that pumpkin kind of stand out. I'm just going to kind of bend it up a little bit to give it a little three-dimensional feeling. Just those edges. So something like that. And now we can add our greeting. But before I do that, I want to tie a bow. So we've got black and white. And for this one I did white, but I wonder if I should try the black for this one, just to kind of help it stand out against that white. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It's always fun to kind of change things up. I'm going to cut it at 8 inches, which is about how much I need to tie a nice bow. I'm going to find the middle and then just kind of make a couple loops and tie it together. There we go. And then if you need to do any trimming to kind of make things nice and even, you can do that. And that's going to go underneath our greeting. So I'm going to use some glue dots and I'm going to put one behind the word thanks. And I have misplaced my pickup tool. So I'm just going to use the tip of my snips here and just kind of lift that glue dot onto the back of my greeting. It's kind of right there. And then I'm going to add my bow. So I'm going to do this from this side so I can kind of see how things are going to look when everything is together. And just kind of make sure it's all where I want it to be. Let's see, do we want that to come down? Probably, instead of up. So we'll make sure that kind of comes down. So I'm going to add my dimensional, and I'm going to place that in the middle, and I'm going to make sure that this little tie, or at the end of that, kind of comes down a little bit. And then I did cut a dimensional in half, and I'm going to just place that over my bow to kind of hold everything together on that side. And then I'll do the same for the other side. So I just take a dimensional and I cut it in half. And so I don't need to have like 3 large dimensionals on this piece, and it kind of saves my dimensionals for me. So just remove that paper. And again, make sure that end stays off the dimensional, and then it keeps wanting to come off. And then I'm just going to place it in the center of that doily, kind of like that. Super cute. Okay, I'm going to just kind of pull this a little bit to make that a little bit bigger if I can. Okay, so that element is all ready to put on our card, and we are going to add it with some dimensionals. I like to put some in the corners and maybe just one down there to support the bottom. And you could put this in the center. I like to have things a little bit higher than center, and so I'm just kind of placing it with maybe about 1/4 of an inch on the right and left, so that you can still see that pretty pattern on the left of the element. So you can kind of see how the little changes can kind of change the feeling of our card, but with that simple layout, we can still get a really beautiful card. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, and share. Visit creativechelsey.com for more information about Paper Pumpkin and to start getting your monthly kit. Have a creative day. Bye.